Okay. Thank you, Evelyn, for this invitation and for your presentation of my background. I know that it's far from the COREnet maybe main research line, that it's religion and migration, but I can say that at the University of Las Palmas, both at the University of Las Palmas, the Gran Canaria, and University of Eastern Finland, I'm applying statistical and mathematical approaches to analyze attitude toward immigrants, attitude toward out-religious group. So maybe we can match quantitative methods with the qualitative one. So as I said, I study attitude toward immigrants and how we can use mathematical and statistical approach to detect different patterns. And today I would like to show you the different and polarized narratives that we can see in migration debates. And we are going to look at how migration is framed and how this framing evolve over the time space, and how topic modeling and sentiment analysis help us to understand the deeper structure behind these discourses. Before that, I would like to say sorry because I canceled my previous webinar because it was scheduled in January, but for health issues, I canceled it, so sorry, and thank you for being here, for inviting me again to this webinar. So before to start with the core of the presentation, the webinar, I would like to briefly introduce a background of the migration situation in Europe, mainly. Migration in Europe is not new, we know that, but narrative surrounding it is becoming increasingly complex and emotionally charged. There are three main blocks of migratory flows in Europe right now. The first one is the Mediterranean route that is also divided into three different blocks, as we can see from the slide. The western route from Algeria and Morocco to the Mediterranean coast of Spain, where almost 17,000 migrants arrived only in 2023, and unfortunately almost 500 died trying to reach Spanish coast. Then we have the most important one, the central route, most important because more than 150,000 arrived in Italy and in Sicily and Lampedusa overall in 2023. And again, unfortunately, more than 2,000 migrants died trying to reach Italian coast. And finally, the eastern route, where almost 61,000 immigrants, mainly from Syria and Iraq, Palestine and Afghanistan and Somalia, arrived in Greece, Cyprus, Bulgaria, and Turkey. Then the second block of migration routes in Europe is represented by the Balkan route, or the route of immigrants who reach the European Union throughout Balkans, such as Albania, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Montenegro, and Serbia, from Syria and Iraq mainly. On this route, for example, the European Union counts almost 100,000 immigrants, and the peak of this route was registered in 2015, where more than 700 people crossed this border, mainly due to the Syrian crisis, and reach mainly Germany, as you know, Evelyn. And then the most recently one, after the Russian invasion of Ukraine, we can see the new route from Ukraine to European Union country mainly, which from the beginning of the war till June 2024 has caused more than 6.74 million of displacement from Ukraine to to European Union. And then the last one, not for importance, is the Atlantic route from the Western Africa to the Canary Island. This route is gaining a lot of visibility because the population of Canary Island is really small and they are receiving so many immigrants. For example, in 2024, over 48,000 people arrived throughout this route, and their initial response was humanitarian response, but now the discourse is shifting toward border control and security. And with this background, we can see that a migration issue in Europe is not only a Mediterranean issue, but it's across all the borders of the European Union. And then we are going into the real core of the webinar, the migration picture on media and social media. This phenomenon, migration, is of course highly debated by political and social actors, and it's also reflected by social media and newspaper. Thus, each actor try to write or speak about migration according his or her personal beliefs and perceived truth, or even in the case of media, editorial choices. So we often follow these three rules when we discuss about migration: reality, extremization, and editorial choices. As we can see from this slide, this magazine, World Crunch magazine, try to print the reality of Sudan. They try to try to escape from a civil war, crossing Egypt and maybe reaching European Union. So this is an humanitarian issue. But not always it's like this, because we know that this topic is really polarized, and there are sometimes comments or even political speech that picture migration as an invasion. But let me ask you a question. Imagine spending just 2 hours in one of these small boats crossing the, for example, Mediterranean Sea. Do you think that our perception or our attitudes toward immigrants could change after this experience? Well, I think yes. This was a question that Professor Juan Carlos Martin made during our workshop with the stakeholders with COREnet in Shaka in Italy and in Las Palmas de Gran Canaria in Spain. So we often print the reality that we know about migration, but often from a perspective of receiving country, because we are receiving countries. And as in the image of the slide about Fox News, sometimes we use some terms to extremize the migration phenomenon, or even more specifically, trying to polarize the public opinion. We use illegal, they are stealing our job, they are ending with our welfare, they want to invade us, or even sometimes related to religious beliefs, they are terrorists because they are Muslims. And such term not only dehumanize the individuals, people, but also frames migration as a threat and not like an opportunity, especially economic opportunity, because we know that in Europe we are an old continent and we need new people to sustain our welfare state. And of course, again, from this picture, we can see that newspaper follows editorial choice to attract sales copy and clicks, a la Barrett. In one of my work with Professor Juan Carlos Martin and Dr. Ginta Repoche, we analyzed the discourse of migration in the media in the most read newspaper in Italy in 2023 with the keywords immigrants. It's interesting because Lampedusa, it's a small island in Sicily, in Italy, and Lampedusa is the main port of arrival for immigrants in the Mediterranean Sea. And only 318 article mention Lampedusa, and only 180 mentioned Sicily in these media articles. So maybe newspapers in Italy prefer to highlight other aspects of this natural process. For example, we can see from this slide some Italian newspapers that mainly discuss the migration in terms of threat of crime. For example, irregular, illegality, Islamic gang trying to conquer Europe. This is horrible, the Kebab war, but also focus on the lack of effective management policies. Like here, immigrants are a resource that can help us with the crisis, for example, or social housing only for immigrants, and job if you are foreign, you cannot get it. So we can see that from here, from the first picture, that the topic of migration is really polarized also in Italy, not only in Fox News. And methodologically, there are several approaches to study the narratives of public discourse on migration. Two of them will be briefly mentioned here, latent direct allocation, LDA, and BERT model. LDA identify thematic patterns in text. And for example, we can answer to question, for example, what topics dominate or what term cluster together. And also BERT models that, on the other hand, help us to analyze the sentiment, and we can highlight if exposed, for example, or media article is using a positive, neutral, or negative tone. But before to go into this true approach, it's important to undertake pre-processing steps in these approaches. Text cleaning. Using Python or other similar program languages, there are libraries for text cleaning, like NLTK, word tokens, WordNet, or word lemmatizer. And this library helps us to remove punctuation, numbers, and special characters. Because we need to the text and the word in the basic form to analyze that, in order to analyze that. And this process are often used for sentiment analysis, topic modeling, such as LDA, machine learning tasks involving text or text similarity analysis. And it's also important to reduce the corpus by removing all the stop words and uninformative words. And in multilingual tools such as BERT, this list already exists, so we don't need to pre-train the code. So now we are going to briefly introduce these two approaches, LDA and BERT. But if you are more interested in that, please don't hesitate to contact me by email or LinkedIn. So LDA starts from two different assumptions. The first one, each document, such as a newspaper article or ex post, is a mixture of topic, and each topic can be seen as a probability distribution of words. Many scholars also point out that LDA, the great advantage of LDA is over other qualitative approaches is that it automatically detects patterns in the text, clustering the corpus by topics based on co-occurrence between words. And the result is usually a table or graph, and so we can compare different trends or over the time, over the space, and also between newspapers or countries, and so on. And the LDA process is simple. Iterative refinement of word allocation, and topics emerge from word co-occurrence patterned across documents. So once we get the topics, we can validate this topic by a coherence score. If this coherence score is high, topics are meaningful and consistent with the dataset's semantic structure. So if the coherence score is high, we can take as good the topics that we found in the analysis. And on the other end, a bidirectional encoder representation from transformers model. It's important for this kind of research analysis because it can process multilingual text corpus, which means that it can be applied not only for English documents, but also for Spanish, German, Lithuanian, Finnish, Dutch, and other many languages. Scholar have shown that the BERT model is proven as the most efficient approach in sentiment analysis. And also Jamil affirms that this model is the most frequently used for analyzing media content sentiment. So this LDA and the BERT model are useful for this kind of analysis because we can gauge the peaks, the most negative, positive, or neutral sentiment may be linked to certain events. And this is possible because we can get from these approaches and using Python or any other similar program languages, we can get tables and graphs. For example, in this slide, we analyze the ex post about migration in Italy in 2023, and we can see that the majority, more than 71%, present a negative sentiment, and only a few more than 18% present a positive sentiment, positive tone about migration in Italy. And from this graph, we can see the different peaks. For example, the first one that we can see is on the 3rd of October. That is the anniversary of the Lampedusa tragedy, where so many immigrants lost their life. Immediately before, we can see that the sentiment was decreasing. And then on the 3rd of October, there is a little peak, positive peak. And then another one is after the 7th of October, after the Hamas attack of Israel. So we can say here that public sentiment is not static, it's reactive. It changes depending on symbolic dates or geopolitical shocks or political speeches. And then from this graph, we can see the proportion of negative, neutral, and positive sentiment across our time series. Again, in Italy in 2023, using BERT model, we can see that the majority of positive exposed were between the 1st of October and the 3rd of October here. And the most negative, the most negative also in this date, but where we almost cannot find positive exposed are on the 6th of October and on 19. So if we want to discuss this this result, maybe we need to analyze the geopolitical situation. And then we also analyzed how newspaper discuss the environmental migration. We analyzed 4 different countries: Italy, Spain, Finland, and the Netherlands in Europe, and other 2 countries in America, the United States of America and the United States of Mexico. And we can see that Spain has the majority of the media articles about environmental migration, while Finland is one. In Italy, the focus is more centered on crisis, defense, and climate threat, while in Spain, it's more focused on international cooperation and agreements. So we have like a fight between security, defense, and diplomatic response between these neighbors. In Finland, we can find topics linked to solidarity, environmental ethics, while in the Netherlands, we can see that the focus is similar to Italy. The key terms are national identity, European Union, and climate adaptation. So we have ethical versus national identity narratives here. And then in the USA, we can see that the main focus is on border security, and we can see that the topic of environmental migration is highly polarized here, while in Mexico is more focused on solidarity, rural communities, and human rights, because Mexico is both a receiving and sending country, and it's also facing environmental issues. So there are some internal movements in Mexico that from affected area of Mexico by climate change, they are moving in other areas. So we have a contrast between crisis and justice narratives here. So we can find 2 different frames in Europe: national identity and security defense in Italy and the Netherlands, and ethical adaptation and diplomatic responses and cooperative tones in Finland and Spain, while in the USA, the path is really polarized, and the focus is on border illegality and some political figures, you know who. And in Mexico, human rights, rural impacts, and climate justice is the key point of the environmental migration. To conclude, we can say that migration narrative matters, and media and political actors play a crucial role here, and they shape perception and policy, of course. Polarization is increasing in the narrative landscape, and we can also add that LDA and BERT model help us to decode the language and the terminology around the narratives of about migration. And but the ultimate question remains how we can promote narratives that foster understanding and not division. So thank you for your attention, and I'm here for any questions if you have. Thank you very much.
Oh, sorry. Thank you. Thank you, Alessandro, for your presentation. I would just say hello to all who just joined the session during your presentation. So as you may have realized, we are recording this session, and this is because we want to upload the presentation and also the Q&A session on YouTube and then share it on our social media channels. Why do I just inform you about this? Because yeah, if you now raise your voice, you share your video, then you give your informed consent that we can share whatever you say or whatever you want to show us. So now it is time for the Q&A for Alessandro, and you can either raise your hand and voice, or you can use the chat function, and then I will read out your questions and remarks. Yeah, there's one comment, it's not really a question, but I would just read it aloud. One of our participants says that I want to say that it is incredible how new tools can help us to analyze discourses and obtain a better understanding of reality in way to take more informed decisions. Yeah, I think it is really also very impressive how you can analyze so a big text corpus with this. I don't know how long it took. Maybe you want to say something about this, but I'm also curious, how long does it take to learn something, like to use these tools?
You need to read every article because the program, the process, does it automatically. So you don't need to read hundred or thousand of media articles. So it's easier in this aspect. But yes, you need to code to prepare a script that you need to teach the program to read and to understand the the media articles and the tone and the positive, neutral, or negative sentiment. And but I can say that it's not the hardest things that I've done in my research career because maybe it's passion of this that maybe it's the passion, yeah. But there are so many guides the in the web that help us to create this kind of scripts, and maybe I can share with you if you want. If you want to write a paper with me about this, I can share with you the script, and I'm open to that.
Yeah,
And maybe we.
I mean, I can just extend the question a bit further. So, if you give courses at the university, what do you think? How much time do students have to invest to learn it? Is one semester enough?
It depends. If you are familiar with Python, no, it's a shorter process. But if you need to learn Python, maybe more than semester. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you for your answer. So we have one question in the chat. Do you think the narrative would be different if the migrants that arrived to Europe were Christians? Maybe the question, I mean, is it clear from the articles? If there are only who is arriving, do they make a difference?
We can ask. We can analyze this. Yes, but of course we can respond to this question following the Giorgia Meloni, Italian Prime Minister speech during the campaign in 2022, that she was like against migration because it's a bad thing for the country, but we need migrants. So if we need migrants, please take them from Christian country because we are shaping a tradition and culture. So maybe we can detect where Christians or where religion is located, in which tone, positive, negative. I'm pretty sure that if we analyze the Muslim or the Islam religion associated to migration, we can find negative tones, negative sentiment. While if we analyze Christians, migrants from Venezuela, from South American countries, we can find a bit more positive sentiment. But we can scrape this, yeah. It's
Yep.
just a keywords play.
Okay, so but the question was, do you think the narrative would be different?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have another question. So, because you studied economics and statistics, I wonder how relevant this topic is for this yeah discipline. Can
Well,
you?
I have to be honest. I'm a statistician. I like the law models. It's true that my PhD is on economics, but my thesis was about quantitative methods to analyze attitudes toward immigrants and attitude toward out religious group. So my passion is models, statistics, and I'm also interested in what happened in our world,
Mhm.
social issues. So I'm trying to combine both statistics or mathematics and social issues such as uh, migration, religion, and yes, but my main topic is quantitative methods, and then I'm applying these methods to social issues. I'm also applying this for climate change and so on. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean,
but yes.
this is total, your approach is totally legitimate. So I don't want to question this. I'm just wondering how interesting it is, for example, for your colleagues from economics. So, I mean, in Germany, we also have a lot of migrants, and yeah, often it is, yeah, seen as okay, there are workers. So in former time, we had this idea of guest workers who come work, build up the state after the Second World War, and then they leave again. And nowadays it's clear we need workers in many areas. So that's what I'm wondering, if it's
Mhm.
yeah, if it is also interesting and if it affects maybe the
I think that
economy, and I mean these kind of results that you have.
yeah, I think that the migration issue right now is more important in Europe. I mean, it's more important for economists than for sociologists right now because we need immigrants. Economists maybe are more selfish in this sense, and we need to we need migrants because we need to pay our welfare state. We need resource to sustain our welfare state. We are famous because we have public education, public healthcare. So we need someone that help us to pay these things. So economists they are trying uh, to study this and how they can help us. But it's also true that we need to convince population before that uh, migrants are a resource for us, not a threat. So there are so many courses in the. I've been in the Washington D.C. last month in the Georgetown University, and I've been working with a economist, and she's studying the economics of immigration, even in these times in the United States. And she agreed with me that we need immigrants. So we need to find the solution to have a better attitude toward immigrants, and that we need that everybody have to understand that immigrants are really important for us because we need to pay our bills. It's a selfish argument, I know, but it's the reality also.
Yeah, and I think it is an important observation, because newspapers are not just there for themselves and to get sales and to, well, again, bills for the journalist, but they shape the society's opinion. And yeah, I think on the one side they are reflecting a bit what is going on in the politics, and this means also to reflect the ideas of the voters. So it's a
Mhm.
bit democratic, but on the other side, I think um, the framing, the wording still can be varied and to make it positive. So I think it's also a bit of an ethical
Mhm.
um, issue.
Yeah, but politics is like clicks. They need votes. So it's easier to say something bad about immigrants because it's the threat, it's the fear. But then when they are in the power, we can see so many examples. For example, in Italy, that it passed a law, I don't know, 3 weeks ago maybe, about call immigrants to come in our country because we need them. So it's like in Italy right now, the migration flow law, it's about 160,000, more than this arrived in 2023 with small boats. So
Yeah.
the Italian government said we need 160,000 people right now, immigrants.
Yeah. This is interesting because it's a bit different now in Germany, but before I proceed, so I just want to encourage our participants also to ask their questions in the chat, or if you want, you can of course still raise your hand. And while you're thinking about your question, I will just ask another one. Yeah, I wondered about you said that you analyzed the most read newspapers, and I wanted just to ask you if you can say a few more words about what kind of newspaper these are. So is it just yellow press, or is it really serious press that is also maybe international read? Yeah, or it's just a local newspaper.
No,
Probably then it's not that read, but yeah.
they are the most read, the most local read newspaper in Finland, in Italy. For example, in Italy, I analyzed La Repubblica, Il Corriere della Sera, and the other one was, I don't remember, but they are the most read newspaper in Italy. In Spain, El Mundo, El País, and La Razón, they are the most read in Spain. I googled the most read newspaper in each country, and I selected this.
Yeah, but you would say they are rather serious than just, I mean, because we have one in Germany, a very famous and internet nationwide red newspaper. It's called Bild, so it's just about images, and it's really just rather yellow press. It's not that serious.
I try to select the both sides.
Okay.
To have a more broad picture of what they think. Yes, but they are serious newspaper. Yeah, they have public funding also in some case.
Yeah. And I wondered about maybe a last question. So you analyzed also Mexico, and as I mean, these things that you can hear at least from Trump is that all from Mexico want to go to the US. And so Mexico is not that much an immigrant country, but an emigrant country. And I think this is really interesting to look at that case because then I think automatically it's a bit different, the framed. I think so. What I remember, I don't have everything, and I can't remember everything you said, but it sounded rather positive. So compared to the US side.
Yes, but Mexico also is experience right now an immigration flow, because right now Mexico is a sending and receiving country, both. Not only internal, because Mexico is facing some climate change and environmental issues within the country, and people are displacing to another part of Mexico. But also from the South America, they are trying to migrate to Mexico. There are so many Argentinians, for example, that migrate in Mexico, and they are working there. So I can say that, yes, right now Mexico can be considered both a sending and receiving country. So But the reason why I selected Mexico for this analysis was because they are facing environmental issues, and of course because it's an immigration country and so on. So
yeah. So I really think this is something that is underexplored. I mean, these emigration or transition countries, I think mostly focuses on immigration countries. That's why I wanted to highlight a little bit more. So I can't see any questions or comments in the chat. And yeah, that's why I would like to thank you, Alessandro, again for your presentation and yeah, your comments and answers to what we said and raised as issues. It was really nice to have you here as the last participant of our webinar series. I think this was also a little highlight. And yeah, again, thank you.
Thank you very much, you all, for attending this webinar and for the invitation, Evelyn. And thank you, COREnet. Don't forget it.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you very much.